guys, we are back for another Dokkan battle video. Today we're going to go ahead and take down the Wicked Bloodline Ultimate Red Zone with the LR Metal Cooler team. For the most part, things go pretty smooth. Wicked Bloodline, of course, has had some just, like, sensational buffs recently, right? We have the Tech Free-to-Play Cooler. We have the STR Base EZA Cooler, who... some of these might have been recorded before or after that EZA Cooler got his EZA. Because I was working on a lot of the stages, like, you know, here and there for several of the different teams. So we have the Tech and STR base form EZA Coolers, right? We, of course, have LR Metal Cooler, LR Final Form Cooler, and then we got LR Golden Frieza a couple of months ago on JP. So with that as our core, all under a 200% leader skill, we are able to absolutely just devastate. Now, the Tech base form Cooler can really be quite solid. He, of course, does defensive stack. This first fight right here in the Wicked Bloodline Red Zone against Full Power Frieza, remember that this is basically the longest Red Zone fight, right? So stacking characters like STR and Tech base form Coolers will be really good for that, you know, Frieza towards the end. This fight can be really tough, but, you know, basically how hard this fight becomes depends upon what your RNG is against the AGL Final Form Frieza, right? So, if, you know, if we would get to that Frieza, and then our Final Form Cooler, right, does like a quadruple crit super turn and wipes out that AGL Final Form Frieza, like, before even super attacks, then this is going to be easy. But that AGL Frieza, he could double super every turn, and he stacks attack for the Full Power Frieza. If he stacks, you know, 4+ times, Full Power Frieza hits, you know, just so freaking hard. So it gets really, really, really scary dealing with him. But, you know, it's basically just a matter of finishing off the last two phases of Frieza pretty quick. Remember that the second form Frieza does an AoE, but, I mean, it doesn't really do much, right? We have the two coolers next to each other and LR Golden Frieza, so yeah, nice double-digit damage, buddy. But really, like, once you get going with the Wicked Bloodline team, like, once you get your rotations in check, once some of these, you know, the metal coolers build up, STR Cooler, you know, builds up his passive, the Final Form 1, you know, it just becomes us steamrolling most of these fights, right? This Full Power Frieza fight, again, just make sure that Final Form Frieza doesn't get too many super attacks off, and we should be good to go towards the end here. Alright, next we are going to go fight Final Form Cooler. Now, Final Form Cooler can actually be a pretty tough fight. I think this is one of the hardest red zone fights in the game. The reason that I think this Final Form Cooler fight is so tough is because of the fact that he is like the hardest hitting like turn 1 boss, basically. This Cooler right here just does devastating amounts of damage. And, you know, we had just an abysmal opening rotation, too, if you guys catch that. Our second rotation, we have 3 metal coolers. So we will have no links activated on our second turn. Links, of course, just such a big deal for these cooler characters, right? You know, Thirst for Conquest, Big Bad Bosses, all these types of links, you know, Metamorphosis. If we have, like, none of these links up, we're just going to see a drastically nerfed and neutered version of what these cooler characters can look like, right? So we do want to keep that in mind. Now, this fight can be very, very tough for a lot of teams because of how hard this cooler can hit. But for this team, you know, we do have the double LR Metal Cooler, which, you know, Metal Cooler, of course, has type advantage against the Int Final Form Cooler, which is the toughest phase right here. But he also can nullify the Int Final Form Cooler super attack as well, which, you know, Final Form Cooler super attack does about as much damage as Omega Shenron. So, you know, most characters, if they get hit by that, you know, that's just instant death. And by the way, we get absolutely obliterated on this turn right here because we had the triple Metal Cooler rotation, right? This is why, like, I do like using that AGL Metal Cooler, but, you know, it can be tough. The one thing that does work about having 3 metal coolers on the team, right? The LR, like, leader, your friend LR leader, and then, of course, AGL Metal Cooler. What makes it work is that LR Metal Cooler himself is a pretty versatile unit, right? Like, Final Form Cooler, you have to have him in slot 2, right? You're not running him in slot 1, and there's no way in hell you're floating him off because he could be the best unit in the game on any given turn, right? So, Final Form Cooler basically is stuck in slot 2. Whereas, like, LR Metal Cooler, you could just do whatever with him, right? Like, you just want to make sure you've got, you know, Big Bad Bosses, Thirst for Conquest active. But, like, you could float him, you could have him in slot 2, you could have him in slot 1. Doesn't really matter so much with LR Metal Cooler. So that makes it easier to run, like, AGL Metal Cooler, right? So that you can get these links active. Because the thing with, like, the EZA Tech Final Form Cooler is really quite good. That came out in the Celebration. I think he's very solid. But, like, you just can't really run him because LR Final Form Cooler, like, has to be in slot 2. So it's like we just don't you don't really get an opportunity to take advantage of that Tech Final Form Cooler, right? Because it's like you're like, you know, if Final Form Cooler is in slot 2, then that gives that guy no chance, right, to get links activated. So that is one unfortunate thing. Although I guess I could have used the Tech Final Form Cooler on this team, the LR Metal Cooler team. Because, you know, we would only have... But I would have to probably keep him on rotation as well, right? It's just you really want to be making sure that these big villain characters that are getting these huge buffs from their links, we just want to make sure we're getting those buffs from our links. So this Cooler right here, right? Again, he does a lot of damage, Final Form Cooler. The enemy supering us. But LR Metal Cooler, we could nullify it, along with just having type advantage, and then all the damage we could shoot out, so... You know, by this point, like, once we get to this phase, I just feel like we're just gonna crush him. I don't think... I mean, if he supered Int Metal Cooler, and Int Metal Cooler only super attacked once, I guess he could one-shot us. But for the most part, like, once we get here, like, we're pretty much good to go. so now we are on the Mecha Frieza and King Cold fight right here. This fight is really pretty easy. There's not really too much to talk about. I guess, you know, in this first phase, remember, only the first Frieza soldier can even super attack. This is what is so bizarre about this fight, is I feel like both Mecha Frieza and King Cold probably could have done a little bit more damage, but why only have one of these Frieza soldiers be able to super attack? Like, these are, like, the weakest red zone enemies, like, I think by far, these Frieza soldiers right here. Like, they're nothing. They provide no opposition whatsoever. Now, I guess I could mention that the weakness for, like, sort of like Wicked Bloodline right now, this sort of cooler team, would be short fights, right? Because remember, Final Form Cooler needs to do 10 attacks to build up his passive. LR Metal Cooler needs to be hit 4 times to build up his passive, right? Easy A Base Cooler is stacking. So what would be tough for this team would be a very short fight, which, funny enough, most of these Wicked Bloodline fights are. Only the full power Frieza is longer than 2 phases, right? But we really didn't have much trouble with these fights besides one. One fight in here was very, very difficult, actually. But this fight just goes down so free, right? Now, King Cold, again, he does seal you every turn, basically. I have noticed that King Cold can actually seal 2 characters at once, which was something that I've seen a couple of times recently as well. That can be very frustrating, right? If he's sealing 2 characters on the turn, it could really, really slow you down. But you just want to make sure to put as much firepower on King Cold as possible to just get him out of here as quickly as possible. Once King Cold falls, the fight is over, right? Because basically, I guess the point of this is King Cold slows you down, hopefully enough for King Cold and Mecha Frieza to sort of take you out, right, with their super attacks. But the problem is that Mecha Frieza and King Cold, their super attack, both of them do about 700,000, which is just not that big of a deal, right? Like, full power Frieza's at 1.4 million damage without any stacks from AGL Frieza, from AGL Final Form Frieza. Yeah, see, like, we get double sealed right here. I was like, what the hell, dude? Please, like, I can't even do damage to King Cold like this. Like, what is this? But, you know, like, full power Frieza's at 1.4 million. That's with no supers from the AGL Final Form Frieza. You know, Final Form Cooler's at 1.5 million. And then Mecha Frieza and King Cold are doing 700k. It's just so bizarre. But yeah, we destroy this. It takes a while because King Cold is double sealing us, which is fun. But really not so bad, I would say. Alright, so now we go into the Metal Cooler fight. Now, this is actually the only fight I've had any difficulties with for any of these cooler teams in terms of this challenge, right? No iteming. I haven't tried this yet with Final Form Cooler's team. I assume it will be difficult as well for that team. So, yeah, this is the hardest red zone fight for, like, sort of like the Wicked Bloodline, like, setup. Because the one sort of, I guess there's two weaknesses this team could have. Number one would be a very quick, short fight. Because all of these Wicked Bloodline characters need to build up, right? Metal Cooler has to be hit 4 times. Final Form Cooler has to attack 10 times. Easy STR Cooler's a stacking character. Golden Frieza has to super attack 5 times and be hit 5 times. Like, you just have a ton of characters that have to build up, right? And then we get to this fight right here. The Cyclopean Guard can do a lot of damage. As you guys see, we took a lot of damage at the start right there. But besides him, it's just the one phase of AGL Metal Cooler, and that's the huge issue that we run into, right? Is that AGL Metal Cooler is AGL. The best unit on the team by far, right, is Final Form Cooler. So if we're not getting good luck with crits, this fight can go on for surprisingly a long time in that second phase. And it's AGL Metal Cooler. It's just, I was getting one-shotted repeatedly. Like, he was just blowing me away. This, again, every other, like, all these red zones, like, you know, there's 3 red zones. For all these, like stages, I was doing it, like, one try, basically on all of them. Except for this fight. This fight took, like, a good 6 or so tries. I tweeted out, you know, a bunch of the tries, but it's just, like, this Metal Cooler, it's like he is supering in every slot. It just was getting ridiculous. And my Final Form Cooler was selling a lot. I think my Final Form Cooler has 25 crit is what he has. And it's like, if he's not critting, we're not really doing a lot of damage to the Metal Cooler boss. And then remember, Metal Cooler is healing every turn as well. I think he heals about 7 million HP per turn, like, once you start, like, doing damage to him. It's like, once his HP is under 90%. He heals like 7 million HP per turn. And it's like, if Final Form Cooler is not critting, like, it just becomes very annoying to deal with, right? So here we go. Now, I tried a couple of different tech characters for this, right? We have the tech base cooler. I tried transforming Frieza a little bit. The problem with transforming Frieza is, again, this is a very short fight. So it's like, we don't really, that's helpful. AGL Golden Frieza dodging any super attacks helps, because that does save some damage, which is very good, right? But transforming Frieza doesn't really start tanking well until, like, we get to his 3rd form. So it's like that, again, like, we were here on Metal Cooler in turn 4. I have been on this Metal Cooler before in turn 2, right? Like, if Final Form Cooler just goes absolutely crazy on a turn, like, we could, you know, get to this phase quickly, but it just gets tough. Like, this Metal Cooler, he does, I think, like, 1.2 million damage on a super. He basically hits about as hard as Broly. But the problem is you get into this phase really freaking fast, right? Whereas, like, Broly is the 4th phase. Broly is tougher than this Metal Cooler, right? But you have way more build-up to get to him, right? So, like, Final Form Cooler, potentially, if we had a really nasty turn, could survive a super attack from this Metal Cooler, but it's incredibly difficult to have him built up so early in the fight, right? Like, that's why this fight is tough. It kind of locks down Final Form Cooler a little bit, right? Of course, Final Form Cooler, he could go crazy, right? If he gives us, like, 4 12-key super attacks or something like that, we could be good to go. And then we do have the double LR Metal Cooler. The other problem I was having is, you know, I talked about this being a thing, but, you know, yeah, LR Metal Cooler is great until he dies, and then you come back, and then the fight is still going on, right? Like, yeah, like, oh, dude, so good. Like, we just gonna revive, we're good. But now, for the rest of the fight, I'm terrified, because if Metal Cooler gets supernova, it's over, right? Like, that's the problem. I do wish they'd made LR Metal Cooler just slightly, just a little bit better. Would have been good. But yeah, we kind of just, you know, do battle with this guy for a while. I think this was like 6 tries or something like that this took. But again, just this asshole super attacking in every single slot on every single turn. Like, he just does a lot of damage. Can be very tricky, right? If this guy was not AGL, this fight would be way easier, right? Because the other thing, too, is I did not bring Easy a base cooler. I could have, right? Because he definitely could stack, but it's just the fight, like, gets into it so quick. And you guys see, like, he's super attacking literally every slot, man. I can't predict when this guy's going to super. But it just takes a while to sort of get to this point, right? So, yeah, the AGL Metal Cooler fight, tough, but it certainly is mainly tough, I would say, because he's AGL. Alright guys, now we are jumping into, I think this is the second hardest red zone fight against the Metal Cooler Core, but to this team, it just simply does not matter. It doesn't matter, because Final Form Cooler is like such a hard counter to this Metal Cooler Core boss, right? The Metal Cooler Core does ridiculous amounts of damage, really nasty, but he's physical. So we can get one good turn by Final Form Cooler, and half of that boss's health is gone, right? So you guys know, the other thing too is that this fight is very advantageous for this team, because against the Metal Cooler army right here, you have to survive for 3 turns. This is a good thing for this team, because remember, every 12 key super attack Final Form Cooler does, we're attack debuffing. LR Metal Cooler attack debuffs on his 12 key as well, right? And it's like, Final Form Cooler is not going to quad super and kill this boss instantly, and then we get no chance to build up, right? That's not a thing. So we're able to just go balls to the wall, like, build up a lot of these characters, right? And we don't have to worry about the LR Metal Cooler, like, the Metal Cooler army dying right here. And then we get to the next phase, and then we could just wipe the Metal Cooler Core out with the ridiculously powerful LR Final Form Cooler. Like, Final Form Cooler, like, what is the Metal Cooler core supposed to do? Right? Like, nothing. Like, he just gets turned into silly putty instantly. This fight, this is a really tough fight. A lot of people don't realize how tough this fight is because of how hard Final Form Cooler dominates it, right? And I think Final Form Cooler is the most fun unit in the game right now. And I think his team is the most fun team in the game right now. Either, you know, LR Metal Cooler's team or Final Form Cooler's team. So people don't realize how annoying this fight is because they're just like, oh, I'm going to obviously use the unit that's the most fun. And then he just happens to be a ridiculous hard counter to this stage right here, right? So, let me know what you guys think, but there's not much commentary I could give here. Like, yeah, the Metal Cooler core, right, he could seal and stuff like that, which, you know, is problematic, but one good turn by Final Form Cooler, and that dude is completely dead. He just gets completely demolished, right? Easy A base Cooler as well. We can very safely run this as a rotation. We got nothing to worry about. Just very, very simple.